Now with Lawson Naidoo. He's from Casac and has been watching all of this throughout the morning. Lawson, a very good morning to you. And I suppose, yes, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo just saying what we've all been thinking and saying from the start of this application by former President Jacob Zuma, that all of these arguments just didn't quite make sense, especially if you consider just what has happened over the past 3 years.
Indeed, I don't think that the decision by the Deputy Chief Justice has come as a surprise to anyone. All legal commentators and so on have been saying since hearing argument on Monday that the case put forward by Mr. Zuma was weak. It was flawed in law, in its interpretation of the correct legal test to be applied, and the facts didn't weigh up either. And so it's no surprise that the Deputy Chief Justice has dismissed the recusal application. The issue that arises now, or that has arisen just before the adjournment, was what happens next. Does the summons still stand, as Mr. Pretorius has argued, and that Mr. Zuma should take the stand and continue to answer questions? Or does the Deputy Chief Justice concur with Mr. Sikekane's view that the former president will now excuse himself from the proceedings and launch a review application both on the decision of the Deputy Chief Justice as well as Mr. Sikekane has said, they intend lodging a complaint with the Judicial Services Commission on the very fact that Justice Zondo has sat in determining this matter, where he is, as Mr. Sikekane puts it, both a witness and a judge.
Yeah, well, also, let's talk about that a little bit more, because, I mean, I'm not a legal mind, but for me, that just strikes me as, again, grasping at straws, a little bizarre, because you made this application, you knew that Raymond Zondo was going to be the one to decide whether he was going to be, recusing himself or whether he was going to stay. And now, again, you come after the fact with what seems like a little too late.
Well, indeed, it's quite clear that the presiding judge will hear the application for recusal in the first instance, which is what the Deputy Chief Justice has done. This was a late affidavit filed by Mr. Zuma yesterday, which sought to basically paint the Deputy Chief Justice as a liar and call into question his account of their various meetings. I think the Justice Zondo has dealt with that in his ruling this morning to say that, yes, they did meet officially, but his statement on Monday was speaking to the issue of personal meetings that may have been held between the former president and the Deputy Chief Justice. And at the end of the day, those meetings have no bearing on the very fact of whether or not the Deputy Chief Justice is able to bring an open mind to bear on these proceedings. If anything, if the fact of the friendship did exist, surely it would point to the fact that the Deputy Chief Justice would be more amenable to Mr. Zuma rather than being biased against him. So I'm not quite sure where Mr. Sikekane is hoping to go with that argument.
I mean, Lawson, you've been watching cases for decades now. Where else has that kind of argument been made, and has it been successful? Where, like we say, Jacob Zuma and his legal team were there from the start. They knew how this would pan out. They knew that nobody else was going to make this decision. And now, again, to come with this at this stage. Has this been done before? And what has happened if it has?
Well, to my knowledge, this is an unprecedented matter that we are dealing with, certainly in South Africa. And it was certainly anticipated that this is how it would play out. But I think we got to go beyond the matter on its face and look at the broader strategy of Mr. Zuma, which is clearly not to cooperate with the Commission. And I think in his ruling this morning, Justice Zondo has explained the serial failures by Mr. Zuma to cooperate with the Commission, to provide affidavits when requested, to provide evidence when required, to turn up for Commission hearings when he's been requested to do so. So this is simply part of Mr. Zuma's broader strategy to avoid having to testify at this Commission and to answer very difficult questions in relation to testimony from 34 witnesses that have implicated him so far.
And it goes again to methinks the lady doth protest too much, or the former president doth protest too much, Lawson here. So can he just do that, though? Are they allowed to just excuse themselves from these proceedings?
Well, depends on the ruling that the Deputy Chief Justice is going to have to make in a few minutes. He can determine that the summons stands and that Mr. Zuma needs to take the witness stand and answer questions. And if Mr. Zuma refuses to do so, he will be in contempt of the Commission. And the Deputy Chief Justice can take action in that regard. And to the extent of appealing to a court to issue a warrant for his arrest for failing to adhere to a duly issued summons.
All right. Well, Lawson, again, if the former president is able to delay this, to continue these delaying tactics, to exhaust all his options up until March next year, which is when we know that this commission is mandated to sit. We know that oral evidence is due to end sometime in December. What happens then? What happens if this battle continues? Do we have any idea, or are these uncharted waters?
Well, again, they're uncharted waters, but it would be within the authority of the Deputy Chief Justice to, in his report, to say that he's provided Mr. Zuma with ample opportunity to refute the allegations against him. He's failed to take up those offers, and therefore, on the evidence available to the Deputy Chief Justice, he can make findings on the culpability of the former president in relation to the allegations that have been leveled against him, and recommend to the law enforcement agency.
All right, we seem to have lost Lawson Naidoo there.